we're going to pick ourselves back up with the end of the portion of Balak. And to take note of the following. Let's actually take a look at the text right away. Let me move you over a second. Wait. Okay. Vayeshev Yisrael Shittim, and Israel dwelled in the place called Shittim. Vayachel ha'am liznot benot Moab, and the people Vayachel, which could mean people, and we'll read it for the moment. The people began to liznot, to whore towards the daughters of Moab. Vatikrena la'am lezivchei Eloheihen, and they females called out to the people to the sacrifices of their God for their God. Vayochal ha'am, and the people partook of the food. Vayishtachavu leloheihen, and they bowed down to their gods, or their God. Vayitzamed Yisrael of Baal Peor, and Israel attached itself to Baal Peor. Vayichar af Adonai b'Yisrael, and God's anger was kindled against Israel. Okay. So there is the event. There is the event. First thing to note is we're in Parshat Balak, and it's the first time we see the word Yisrael. What do I mean by that?
Without B'nai Yisrael, next attached to it?
I actually shouldn't say that. The word Yisrael might have actually been, I have to think now whether or not he brings it up or not. Okay, it must be used. But it's the first time we actually have Yisrael in the story other than, right, I was totally wrong, but other than being a mass of people who are seen from atop a mountain by Bilam and Balak. We are completely, we are actors in a story that is not our story. And what's fascinating is all that happens and transpires up on those mountains, we are completely unaware of. We have no idea about Bilam being hired by Balak to go up there and try to curse us. We're going about our business, right? We're going about our business in our tents and everything's just fine. It's us doing our thing. And there was we were this close apparently to if he had gotten his way to curse us, and it would have been terrible for us, but we would never have known the story were it not for what? It's not a trick. If we're not for God telling Moshe what happened up on those mountains, we would have and then say, write this down in the Torah, we would never have known that it happened. And that's the point I'm trying to make. We'd have no clue. Fine. So suddenly we're back as actors in a story. And this is the story that we have. We're in Shittim, but Shittim, where do we think we were? Until now, what was the place of the Jews? Where were we? Where does Bilam look down upon us, and where we are encamped?
Let's see my
in the plains of Moab, Arvot Moab, the plains of Moab. Just imagine now. Look at the map in your head, and there's the Jordan River running up, right? And on the left side, the western side of the Jordan River is. The western side of the Jordan River is Canaan, right? And the side of the Jordan River is Moab. The west side of the Jordan River is Israel. The right side of the Jordan River is the country of Jordan today. So we are in Moab, but not in the mountains of Moab, which is Harei Moab, but in Arvot Moab, in the plains at the in the Jordan Rift Valley. That's where we are. So Shittim would seemingly be a specific locale in Arvot Moav, but it'll also be a basis for a little drush, what that name might carry with it. In fact, every word will be the basis for drush. So what is the event here that seems to be the most significant event or activity?
Sounds like they're having illicit relations with the Moabite women.
Okay, so you've illicit relations.
Mm-hmm.
Not okay, but yes, correct. And then?
And sounds something like maybe idol worshiping. I don't know, right?
There is idol worship that's happening. They are
Porn, yeah.
They bow to their gods. They bow down to their gods. The Israelites are worshiping pagan gods. A few months ago, they are worthy of divine protection from a cursor guy, and just receive these blessings for how wonderful our lives are in our tents. Yes. And now suddenly we are doing all manner of horrible things, and included in worshiping gods, right? Such that God wants punishment. We're not going to do the punishment right now of what humans should do, but by the time the story is over, there's a magefa. There is a plague that God brings about. And we should know the number of people who died in this plague. Arba'ah ve'esrim aleph. How many? 24,000 people perish as a result of this experience.
Wow.
People. That's a lot of people. And we'll deal with see in a little bit. We know how we compare some numbers for us right now. So this is this a little blip or
Nope.
no? It's a major event, and it came out of nowhere. So how does it come that the Israelites are dwelling in Shittim and that they begin to cavort with the Moabite women? That's a gentle word, cavort. Okay, and then they're worshiping idols. So that word vayachel, it can either mean begin or it means chulin, chol. What does that word mean? Chulin and chol.
Profane.
Profane, right? It means to take that which has sanctity to it and to desecrate it. To desecrate it. Now, again, weekdays are chol in comparison to kodesh, so it's not really desecrated, in time. But in this case, they have taken their holiness and stripped it away, and they've done so through these actions. Okay, well, let's start with that first word. Maybe we don't have to go to the extreme. The phrase that's used is one of the extremes is liznot el benot Moav. If you think about how some of the prophets use that word znut and zona, calling us a zona, for example. Israel has been called a zona by the prophets. And what do they mean when they call us that? Yirmiyahu calls us atzoah zona. You lie there like a whore.
Because they're not loyal to God.
Yeah.
Not loyal to Hashem.
So we are harlotry as a national experience of or activity of harlotry is the experience of turning from God, to whom we are meant to be married, and binding ourselves in some way or another and embracing a foreign god, avodah zarah. So idolatry is in the marriage of God and Israel, the act of adultery, which is also a translation of these notes, right? It's an act of adultery. So one could perhaps say here that the people, when it says liznot benot Moav, that we were doing that, it might mean that in the metaphoric sense, the Moabite women brought us to idolatry, And by calling us to go eat with their sacrifices, and we did it. So it's possible you could just go there, but you have too many questions. Like, so what's the role of these women? How are the women being so inviting for us to come in? Are they just greeters outside of a pagan temple and say, "Come on in," right? Or is there more here? And especially because we're going to read the story of Zimri in a few verses later, where there is sexual activity going on, we seemingly will go there. But if you look for a moment at the other text, when Moshe deals eventually with the orders, right, they lead a war of punishment, of vengeance against the Midianites. Midianite, Moabites is all confusing here, right? Midianites are lowered down. We thought they were just advising, but suddenly we're just all interchangeable. But Yomer Alehem, they come back from war. But Yomer Alehem Moshe Hachiyitem. Calling a keva, did you leave all the women alive? Weren't they? They were there. There for playing a role with Israel in the matter of Bilam. That's interesting, to somehow bring to a breach, a major breach with God. Al Devar Peor, around that matter of the Peor. And that was a tremendous, plague that came about. The women are to blame for the plague. So that seems, in that sense, it could be that they said coming into our our church here. But Be'ata, now we see a little further. Here, Gu calls Zachar Bataf, Achol Isha Yodad Ish Mishkav Zachar, kill all the children, and any woman who has had relations with a man. So having relations with a man is a factor that is clearly playing a role here. Whether that means that they were presumed to have had relations with the Israelites, we'll not go further than that right now. So it's about, indeed, znut is harlotry with these women. So so how does such a thing happen? Firstly, before you ask the question how it happens, we'll ask the first question, which is who has the reputation here and not. Let's actually pick this up. We'll start with this, the middle of this midrash. So the first point of the midrash wants to talk about ha'am, the people. That's the way it's used here. By Yeshev is said here. Oh, whenever we have by Yeshev, we're going to have a problem here, and then ha'am. So Liz, you want to read it? The people began.
The people began. Every place that the people is mentioned is an expression of shame, but every place that Israel is mentioned is an expression of commendation. Now the people were as murmurers, speaking evil in the ears of the Lord. So the people spoke against God and against Moses, and the people wept on the night. Until when will the people anger me? And Moses saw that the people were wild, and the people gathered together against Aaron, and similarly in all of them.
Right. So the hold on a second. So the pasuk says, "Vayeshev Yisrael b'Shittim Yisrael," and it was encamped at Shittim, but Vayachel Ha'am, these nodal b'not Moab. So Ha'am is a term that's used for the bad behavior. Now, sometimes there are those who will say that Ha'am is actually a subset of Yisrael and refers to certain really troubling factions that are there who are always making the trouble, and all those Ha'ams is referring to them. And otherwise, it might just be that when it is that we're behaving badly, God calls us Ha'am and not Yisrael. So
I thought it was for commendation, though.
Say that again?
I thought it could also be for commendation.
Ha'am?
Yeah.
I don't know. The point of the midrash is, the problem will be, okay, let's get every single time the word ha'am is used, and then we'll see if it actually works right. But for now, the argument is that ha'am, when the Torah uses it, it always wants to describe bad behavior. Ha'am. So, okay, so we got the people bad, and now we want to talk about the other participants here. Okay, want to continue there? The people began to go whoring.
The people began to go whoring. Throw a stick into the air and it falls to its place of origin. That is its roots. The one who had begun with the whoredom at first finished with it in the end. Their matriarchs are either.
Oh, hold on a second before you turn the page. Who are the people that who are the women that the Israelites are cavorting with?
Moabites.
Benot Moab. Okay, tell me about Moab. Who are
Ruth
they
comes
from?
Moab.
The origins of Moab.
Lot and his daughters.
Correct.
His
So
wonderful
Moab
daughters.
is the child born of Lot and his daughter who sleeps with him on the second night. I think it's the second night. Yes. Ammon is of the first night and Moab the second night after they flee. If you just recall the story, they flee Sodom. They think the world is coming to an end. The daughters get their father drunk and they sleep with them. So they use wine to lure and whatever to create a situation where they can have sex. And actually Moab is considered to be that daughter who mothers Moab is considered to be more disrespectful to our norms because she named her child Moab, which means
From my
From my
from
father.
father,
Oh, my
right?
father.
Ammon does not give a label to the child, but Moab is daddy's boy. Okay, so that's bad. That's right. So go on. The one who began with the whoredom at first, finished with the end. The matriarchs, they're matriarchs. Go ahead.
Ammon and Moab began with whoredom. And the firstborn said to the younger, let us give our father to drink.
So they're the impetus towards whoredom. So blame them more than the men. Is that what we're saying here? I don't know. But they are certainly, they are this seductresses. I don't know if that doesn't work so well, plural. They're the ones seducing, okay? But that doesn't mean that the one who was seduced is to be considered blameless. How do we know that they're not blameless? How do we know they're not blameless, the ones who were seduced? Because 24,000 are killed by God.
Right.
So you know that they're not blameless. And because Moshe is told, you better go punish these people. So they are not poor victims of the seductions of these women. They are participants in behavior. And that's what we have here. Now, this is not the way it was always presumed about. I'll frame it differently. Jews were always in rabbinic literature. Jews were to be presumed to be suspect on theft. That was a hard thing for us to hold ourselves back from. But on other areas of immorality, we were not to be suspect on other areas of immorality. Let's see how this midrash plays it out. Bobby, you want to read for us? And Israel Bod and Shittim.
Sure. And Israel Bod and Shittim. This is the law. Israel was redeemed from Egypt in the merit of many things our rabbis taught. Israel was redeemed from Egypt in the merit of 4 things. They did not change their names. They did not change their language. They did not reveal their secrets.
Okay, skip down to here. They did not
break down into forbidden sexual relationships, as it is written. A locked up garden is my sister, my bride. This refers to the men, a locked up spring, a sealed fountain. And this refers to the virgins. You should know
I never
this.
understood. The midrash is all over the place in Shir right? And so like my sister, my bride is with a man. Like how does that work? But okay. So so we should know we were very, very chaste. Go on.
Should know this, right? You should know this because there was one who transgressed, and the Torah publicized it. Now the son of an Israelite woman, and he was the son of an Egyptian man, went out amongst the children of Israel.
So Torah says basically there was one case of
Right.
Israelites who are cavorting with Egyptians. One,
Mhm.
and it was bad. Okay. Otherwise, we to our behaviors as they are meant to be. All right. All the 40 years. Bobby, continue if you could.
All the 40 years in the wilderness, they did not go astray until they came to Shittim. Therefore, it says, and Israel abode in Shittim, and the people began to commit harlotry. It was called Shittim because there they did foolishness.
Shtut, Shittim,
Shitut.
foolishness. Go on.
He who commits adultery with a woman lacks understanding. From Mishlei, the people began to commit harlotry. There are springs which raise mighty people, and there are those that raise weaklings, those that raise beautiful people, and those that raise ugly ones, those that raise modest people, and those that raise people steeped in licentiousness. The spring of Shittim was one of a harlotry, and it watered Sodom. You find that they said, where are the men who came into you? Bring them out to us.
Because Sodom is a place of harlotry, basically, right?
Yeah. Since that spring was accursed, in the future the Holy One will dry it out, as it says, and a spring will issue from the house of the Lord and will water the valley of Shittim. From the days of Abraham, no one had broken out in harlotry. Once they arrived at Shittim and drank from its waters, they burst forth.
So I don't know. Are we describing actually that there is a spring there? Maybe there was a spring there. It's a good place to settle right before you to just settle in before you cross. And now we're saying that you know what? Some springs, you drink of the waters, and you will turn into whatever the power of those waters are. Okay. So the Fountain of Youth is over here and in Florida. Ponce de Leon thought it was there. So in this case, the fountain of immorality is in Shittim. Okay. So this is a place which is going to be a dangerous spot if you're not careful, and we weren't careful. One last point from the Midrash before we talk about how things got to this point, and that is comparing, as I call it, comparing terrible events. Mick, you want to read this? Rabbi Levi said?
Rabbi Levi said there was one more serious than the sin of the golden calf. For while in reference to the calf it is written, take off the golden rings, here it is written, was joined.
Vayitzamed to Baal Peor, and
to Baal Peor like bracelets because
like
of the
bracelets.
calf about 3,000 fell. But here the number fallen is 24,000.
So it is ring is to bracelets, like 3,000 is to 24,000, right?
Right.
That means that sin of the golden calf is
only an eighth.
okay. The exact measurements there is far less serious than the sin of Baal Peor. Now, is that what like you think about how we generally think of the events of the Bible and the implications long term? So you tell me, is this what you would have thought?
It never got the same attention or highlights as the golden calf. Everyone knows the golden calf. No one knows about Peor.
Baal Peor is like is a footnote in the story. It's in the way we generally think about it. Okay, maybe we might be wrong, right? And the golden calf is something that haunts us forever. It's if you listen to my daily dose of Torah, because everyone's struggling around the impact of having participated in the golden calf, right? But Baal Peor, we kind of like we don't pay attention to Baal Peor.
Just move on.
So, but maybe we're wrong. We'll have to see how the Torah actually says, right? Whoever was in Baal Peor is a big, so we're wrong about that. We're wrong about that. Baal Peor is a very big deal, a very big deal. So,
I just want to say, so, I mean, I'm not diminishing the evilness of it, but I guess I just wanted to like ask what it sounds like. Just it was the men who were involved versus like an entirety of the nation, or a more, distribution among men.
You're right, but the nation is generally, we will have a pattern here. The women did not give their earrings for the worship of the golden calf either, right? And so, yeah, the men are messing things up for everybody.
Again,
Okay.
yeah.
That's what we have here. So let's see 2 explanations for how this happened for today, and then we'll prepare ourselves for the next part of the process of study that we'll do next week. Let's take a look at the Seforno and then the Gemara. Okay. Alex, you want to read the Seforno?
Please note, originally there had been no intention of committing idolatrous acts at all. All that the males had intended was to indulge their libidos with the women folk who made themselves available. However, these people fell victim to precisely the warning of the Torah and Exodus of what would happen if Jews would allow the Canaanites to remain in their country and conclude a covenant with them. They would be invited to their social gatherings, resulting in their eating forbidden foods and eventually intermarriage, followed by lip service to their gods.
I have to tell you, I never like these translations. It's not mine. I don't know what lip service, how they come up with that phrase. Let's look in the Hebrew better. They'll call to you and you'll eat from its altar offerings. And you'll take their daughters for yourself, and those girls will be worshiping their idols. And they will lead your children astray. He's new, it's the same word, right? These notes after their gods. That's another basis for suggesting that the first reading here is that all that happened was he's new at that they're doing idolatry. That's the primary sin. Obviously, it starts off with the marrying the girls. Okay, so first, all they wanted was to have sex with those shiksas. I'm using the terminology on purpose. Okay, and we don't even think highly of them. But before you know it, they brought us to do their avodah zarah. And that's how that's how the Yetzer Hara works. Let's say Me'ra'a el Ra'a. It goes from one grievous thing to the next. I decided I'm just gonna indulge my Yetzer Hara to have sex with this woman once for 20 minutes. All you need is 20 minutes. And then I'll be done. And guess what? The Yetzer Hara says, thanks for letting me in. Now I'm in charge. And that's the way it goes. That doesn't mean that you're not responsible. You're responsible for the initial entry. And yeah, you're responsible for all the things that Yetzer Hara is doing inside of you if you want to make yourself other, but you're not other, right? The Yetzer Hara works that way. You give an inch, it takes a and you allow yourself to do one sin, other sins come along. Grievous sins, me'ra'a el ra'a. The Gemara has a further reading of this. So, Bobby, you want to read us the Gemara, please? Let's actually skip the first one. Bilam said to them, because he says, right, I'm going to give you, I'll give you eitzah. The Hebrew phrase was what? Hold on. All right, I'm going to go home. I want to give you eitzah. Okay, for what the people will do to you, but maybe what the right way to do with them. That's the basis of this Bilam's eitzah, as we referenced it once before. Go ahead.
Balaam said to them, the God of these Jewish people despises lewdness, and they desire linen garments, as they have no new garments. Come, and I will give you advice. Make for them enclosures using wall hangings and seat prostitutes in them. Old women outside the enclosure and young women inside, and have the women sell them linen garments.
Okay, so this is an interesting contrivance here, but right? So here we are, at our vote Moab at Shittim. The Moabites have kept a distance, but Bilam suggests don't keep a distance, right? That's what, don't keep a distance.
Mhm.
And what do we know about these bedraggled people who moved through the wilderness? There's actually a description about the clothes that we wore. It was a fantastical, miraculous description that our clothes never grew old on us,
Wow.
right? Never wore out, and they grew with us as we grew. What a miracle! So it's a great miracle. And how do you feel after 40 years wearing the same clothes that never wear out? God, it's change your clothing, right? And I just wish I had something nice and new and fresh. So Bilam it starts off with Bilam saying, let's just have some wares at the market. And then I'm going to set it up so there's our privacy screens here because I've got other plans. Privacy screens. Go ahead. Balak made for them.
God made for them enclosures using wall hangings from the snow mountain, the Hermon until Beit HaYeshimot, and he sat prostitutes in them with an old woman outside and a young woman on the inside. And at the time when Jewish people
You got the format. You set up a little enclosure. You have a little babushka on the outside and a hot prostitute on the inside. Okay, that's the setup.
At the time when Jewish people were eating and drinking and were glad and going out to stroll in the marketplace, the old woman would say to a Jew, "Aren't you seeking linen garments?" He would enter the enclosure and ask the price. The old woman would quote him a price equal to its value, and the young woman would quote him a price less than its value. That scenario would repeat itself 2 or 3 times.
So let's try to see how the Gemara is. It's a fascinating, great Gemara, right? So here I am. I'm a very pious Jew. We've never done the bad things. That's why we got out of Egypt. 40 years, we were very chaste. And we're going to the marketplace and there's an old lady selling things. So does that feel okay?
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's an old lady. Well, nothing's going to happen with an old lady, right? The old lady says, hey, I'll sell you wares. And so from behind the old lady, there's a beautiful woman, and I'm going like this. I don't know. I follow the rules. And the lady said, and then she says, I'll sell it to you for cheaper. So what's the first Yetzer Hara that we describe here?
Getting a bargain.
A bargain. The bargain. Wholesale, right? Wholesale is the first Yetzer Hara. So you get them first through like a bargain. And the bargains coming from this alluring woman in the back who I'm not looking. And 2 or 3 times I'm not looking. Each time she says you buy for cheaper, and I say no, I'll buy for the old lady in the front. I'll pay full price. And but it's hard each time I go. It's my Yetzer Hara for a bargain, and this woman who now I'm taking a peek, or I'm allowing myself to get comfortable with this reality of this woman. I think that's how the Gemara. Maybe I'm reading too much into the Gemara, but why does it imagine the scenario? Okay, so Bobby, go further, and thereafter.
Thereafter, she would say to him, "You are like a member of our household.
We know each other already. Come on.
Sit and choose for yourself the merchandise that you want, and a jug of."
I'll bring you in the bag. I'm sorry. So it used to be I have 3 things out front, and you choose one of these 3 things. Now I say, you know what? We've been here a bunch of times. You can come in the back and have your pick. So you give the illusion of control. Is fully setting the trap. Any shuk can be like this, right? Any shuk can be like this.
Oh my God!
I think you're finally going to get I don't know. I was not a Arab shuk kind of guy, right? But you think somehow you're gonna get the bargain. They always will win. Okay. Yeah, I mean, in this case, it's more than that. So she said, come on, sit down. And then she said, a jug of Ammonite wine.
Jug of Ammonite wine was placed near her, and neither the Ammonite wine nor Gentile wine had been prohibited yet for Jews.
So it's permitted. Wine, as of now, is permitted. Why was pagan wine forbidden?
Might lead to mixed dancing. No,
So the first reason pagan wine was forbidden, pagan's wine was forbidden was because of it. Maybe it was used for libation. So we should have no connection to idolatry, which is one part of this. Later on, when we continue this practice, even though idolatry stopped being the case, right? Why do we continue this practice? Because of social interaction with Gentiles that would lead to intermarriage. So they're all caught up in this, but as of now, that decree had not been laid out. Then she said to him, go on.
is it your wish to drink a cup of wine? Once he drank the wine, his evil inclination burned within him.
Yeah.
I mean, this is fine for a few, 24,000. Didn't word get around?
Okay, we'll talk about how strong, how pervasive was this plan. But this is Bilam. The Chazal read Bilam's big plan. I can't get them with a curse, but let's organize a massive way to undermine them. I'll get them through their groins. Okay, that's really what it's going to come down to. So he's now drunk. He then said to her,
submit to me and engage in intercourse with me. She then removed the idol that she worshipped from her lap and said to him, worship this. He said to her,
it wasn't in her lap, it was actually, it's apparently in her like the girdle or the bosom, the bra that she was wearing. She pulls it out and says, worship this. He said to her,
am I not Jewish?
I can't do that. I can do this.
I am therefore forbidden from engaging in idol worship. She said to him, and what is your concern? We are asking you to do nothing more than defecate in its presence. But he does not know that its worship is conducted in that manner.
Pause for a second. So Baal Peor, the Peor is to defecate. Now, you could, but without this midrash, I would have read Baal Peor as the way in which the Torah insults idolatry. Often, we know that the other prophets will insult idolatries as nothing more than sticks and wood and stone, meaninglessness. Right? In this case, it is poopy. All right, that's all. That's what you're calling it, and you're just insulting the idolatry. But the Chazal went further. They said it's not that you're missing it. This was actually a method of idol worship which involved the grossest thing we can imagine here, right? To defecate in front of the idol. So understand something here, right? He was ready to sin with his front, and now he will also be sinning with his backside. Okay. So she's all you have to do is, I'm just asking you to defecate in front of it. He had no idea that was actually the avoda, and once you do the avoda, you're in big trouble. Now the Torah describes vayishtachavu, and they bowed, right? And that could be the next step, because once he's in, he's in. And she says, moreover,
I will not leave you until you deny the Torah of Moses, your teacher, as it is stated. But when they came to Baal Peor, they separated themselves to the shameful item, and they became this detestable, like that which they loved.
Go on.
They devoted themselves to the disgrace of defecation, detested the name of God. With regard to the verse, and Israel dwelt in Shittim, Rabbi Eliezer says Shittim is the name of the place. Rabbi Yoshua says it's an allusion to the fact they were engaged in matters of shtuyot, nonsense, prostitution, and idol worship.
Go on.
With regard to the verse, and they called
Vatikrenna.
the people to the offerings of their gods. Rabbi Eliezer said naked women encountered them. Rabbi Yeshua says they all became those who experienced a seminal mission.
So the word, as we've talked about in the past, that like by Amalek, that right, that Asher Karcha Badera doesn't mean that they have you. In this case, women, these naked women just came out right on, surprised them and allured them, or is it Mikra as in seminal emission, and everyone had defiled themselves by that practice? So that's where we find ourselves. And so we go back to the story of the golden calf. What happened to the golden calf?
They made idols, they worshipped idols.
We don't know exactly what happened, right? They are circling around. There's an abandon that the Torah seems to describe around the worship of the golden calf. And you can go to the movie and you can sort of imagine, the wild abandonment. But is it an orgy? I don't think it's an orgy. It's just an abandon in idolatry. So this is, sexual depravity with idolatry and the desecration of the human being in the process. That is vayachel. That word was not just a throwaway, not that we began, but we desecrated ourselves. That holy people who would be praised for how our tents were so modest, our tents don't look into the other person's tent we described, right? Look how we have stripped ourselves of everything that was high and holy and good about ourselves, and we're defecating to an idol by the time the story, the event has. And that's where we're going to stop. So next week we'll actually see quickly how it's referred to in Dvarim, and then the punishment that God wants to be meted out, and whether or not it happens with the surprise visit of Zimri. Okay, so let's stop here, and Mitzvah next week we'll continue with this storyline.
Like a very bad place to end.
I can't help it.